We are in week 3 out of our 4-week series called Unplanned, where we have really the last few weeks been looking at moments in Jesus' life that, even though he's Jesus, he knew they were going to happen. They weren't planned. They were, in fact, both instances, he was just walking down the road and somebody came up to him and began talking to him. He didn't set out in that moment to go and teach. It was just an opportunity. It was an encounter in his life that he used to teach people. And we learned in the first week of the series that Jesus should be first in our life. He should be our number one priority. We learned last week that our hearts can't be divided. He used money as an example of that you can't serve money and him. But that can be anything. Our hearts cannot be divided. But today we're going to shift our focus a little bit on this idea of something being unplanned, because the last couple of weeks, Jesus was the one who was unplanned in that moment. But this week, Jesus is very much planned. This is very much part of his plan in the moment we're going to look at today. But the people he was talking to, it was not on their plan, right? The last couple of weeks, those guys sought out Jesus. They knew who he was. They had heard him teaching. They had seen what he was doing, and they approached him. They came to him. It was on their agenda to find Jesus and ask him these questions, to talk to him. But today, the group of people that Jesus is talking to, they're kind of just wondering about life. This is not planned for them. And Jesus shows up and he teaches them what's maybe the greatest lesson that they or we could ever be taught. And it's really a fascinating story. It is in Matthew. We just prayed over it, Matthew 28. That's where we're going to be today. If you don't have a Bible, we have some in the lobby for you. But let me catch you up on what's happened in Matthew 28. Jesus has died on a cross through a sham trial that they arrested him and tried him in the middle of the night. We're going to be talking about that in a few weeks. And then they killed him on a cross, but he rose again. That is our hope for eternity. That is why we put our trust in Jesus, because he lived a perfect life, died on a cross, and rose again. And so he's done that. He's been on earth for a little while, and he's shown himself to his followers, to his disciples, a few times. A few random times he has shown himself to them. But mostly, his disciples and those who are followers of Jesus are kind of wandering around earth with no plan. They're not really sure what to do next. In fact, we can read some of them went back to their old jobs because they just thought, man, we had given our life to this guy and then he died, and I know he rose again, but I'm not real sure. They weren't real sure what to do. And so they didn't really have a plan after having followed Jesus. We talked about this last week, that I'm a planner. Some of you are planners, some of you are not. But I'm a planner. One of the places I need to plan the most is the grocery store, right? When my wife, Dale, calls me at the end of a day and she says, hey, could you stop by the store and pick up, and she gives me a list, I function really well. I'm like a Navy SEAL in the grocery store. Like, I'm weaving in and out of people. They don't even know I was behind them. I'm reaching over their shoulder, they're looking right, and I'm grabbing stuff off the left side, I'm riding the back of the cart so I can make better time. I'm in and out. I mean, it's amazing when she gives me a list. If she doesn't give me a list, if she just calls and says, hey, could you pick up something for dinner? It's an entirely different story, right? It's one of the most overwhelming parts of my life, really. I walk into the store, and it starts from the second I walk in. Should I get a cart? No, I don't think I'm going to need a cart. Should I get a basket? No, I'm not even going to need a basket, right? And now it's even worse because I always forget all the bags. There's 1,000 of them in the back of my car, and I forget to take them in. And so then I begin walking through the store thinking, what should we eat for dinner? And you know what I always go look at? I go look at the fish. I don't know why. I can count on one hand the number of times we've cooked fish for dinner, but I always go look at it, and I think, that looks really good. I should get that fish, right? Also, we don't really live in a super fishy state, so that's probably not the best choice in the entire grocery store. But I do it every single time I go look at the fish, and I continue to walk around. I go through the produce section. I pick up fruit and put it back, so that's why you wash fruit, right, when you get home with it, because I've touched it and put it back. I walk through the most random sections of the grocery store just wondering, what should we get? Honestly, a kid in a candy shop is more decisive than I am when I don't have a list in the grocery store. And so I wander around up and down aisles. I feel confused. And then she calls at some point. She's like, where are you at? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know anymore. I need you to come rescue me, I get home and the kids run, what are we having for dinner? And I drop a bag of jelly beans and some taquitos on the table. And I'm like, this is it. This is what I came up with after 3 hours in the grocery store. Because I didn't have a plan. I just wander around. That's kind of where these disciples are right now. Like they're kind of aware of where they're at, but they're just missing something. They don't know what to do. They don't know what's next. They don't know where to go from here. And these followers of Jesus after his death and resurrection are just wandering around unsure. And so Jesus gathers them on the side of a mountain, and they probably thought that this was just another appearance of Jesus to them after his resurrection, that this was just a normal time to see him. But this was a special meeting. In fact, it's in this meeting that Jesus sets the direction for followers of Jesus, both then and today, for the rest of our lives. And so we're going to read about this meeting he had, where there's no plan going on for the people who are there. And then we're going to see what Jesus says and what it means for us. So Matthew 28:16, it says this. The 11 disciples traveled to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshiped. But some doubted. This is my favorite line in this. But some doubted. This is just some freedom for some of you that are like, yes, I'm at church today, but I also have some questions. You are welcome to be here. They worshiped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came near and said to them, all authority has been given to me in heaven and earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always to the end of the age. Now, you're going to have to use your imagination this morning, because this moment in history was one of the most amazing moments in all of history. There's Jesus, and then his 11 disciples are probably the closest to him. And then there's probably a few more around, probably a couple hundred. That was who had said they were going to follow Jesus. And so Jesus begins to start talking, and everything changes in their life. They had shown up with nothing on their agenda, not knowing what to do. And then Jesus begins to talk, and people begin to lean in. People begin to listen. Everyone gets quiet. They want to make sure they don't miss anything because they don't know what to do next. And it seems like Jesus is giving them some instructions, and so they begin to really listen. And this few hundred people that had been following him around are confused. Because at this point in history, there's around 300 million people in the world. On this hillside, at best, there's a couple hundred followers of Jesus, right? You would think if we were planning Jesus' mission and his ministry at that point, like there's going to be thousands and hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people who have given their life to Jesus. But Jesus has done what he was supposed to do on earth. He gathers everyone who is following him. They're mostly confused, and there's only a couple hundred of them. And Jesus is not frustrated with them. He's not disappointed. Even though they don't know the plan, Jesus knows what's happening. And he says to them what he says to us: if you're my follower, if you've given your life to me, I'm about to give you purpose and meaning. I'm about to give you the most important job you will ever have. Here's what he says to that crowd. Here's what he says to us, is here's what a Jesus follower should do. A Jesus follower should tell people about Jesus. That's what he says. That's what he gathers them together. He says, hey, meet me on this hillside. They all travel there. He gathers them together. He says, here it is, guys. Go tell people about me. And that's really it. It's pretty simple. All of these people with no plan, and he gives them a plan. And I can just imagine, this is not in the text here, but I can just imagine there's a few hundred people. There's Jesus on the side of the hill. They've gathered around, and there's probably people in the back trying to shh everybody down. You know, there's always the talkers in the crowd. You know, somebody's, man, I can't hear what he's saying. Please be quiet. I want to hear what he says. And then somebody else is like, well, he's not saying anything. He's finished, right? He's done talking. What do you mean he's done talking? He just started. I just barely heard him get started. He's got, I'm sure he's got, at least 40 minutes and 3 points, and he's got some more to say. And they're like, no, he's done talking. He's not saying anything else. And can't you hear the whispers in the crowd? What did he say? And someone's like, he just said to go tell other people about him. That's it. What kind of plan is that, right? Like if you've left your job to follow and he gathers you on the hill and he's like, all right, here's your job now. Go tell people about me. There's probably people in the crowd, those ones who doubted already, and they're saying, well, that's not a good plan. Like, I need more than that. I need more details than that. I need more information than that. I bet somebody there was like, hey, hey, go ask Matthew for a plan. I bet Matthew's organized. He was a tax collector. He's good with numbers. I bet he's got a spreadsheet with a plan of what we're supposed to. Let's go ask Matthew what Jesus really meant when he said go tell others. And I'm like, no, Matthew said that's all he meant. Just go tell others about him. Jesus is like, no, that's it. Just tell others about me. Probably someone says, Jesus, hey, I heard your plan. Maybe one of the disciples spoke up. Jesus, that's great. Let me take it from here. I think you also meant to say build some really big buildings, right? Build some big buildings, take out a lot of advertising, put on a bunch of programs. And Jesus is like, yeah, you can do all that. I don't care if you do that. But my plan is for you to go tell people about me. And somebody was like, hey, Jesus, I actually run some community events for my town down the road. And I think maybe you're missing, maybe we could have some retreats and some conferences. And Jesus is like, yeah, that's great. Love retreats, conferences, Used to get away with the boys on the boat all the time. That's great. But what I want you to do is go tell people about me. Now, here's why this is crazy. Is because it worked. Like, that was his plan. Hey, you couple of 100 people, just go tell people about me. It's going to work out. And it worked. Today, there are, almost 2,000 years later, there's almost 3 billion followers of Jesus. And the plan was, you just go tell them. That was it. And it worked. It was an amazing plan. And this is great news for you and for me. This is great news. We can't miss how great this news is for us. Here's why telling people about Jesus being our responsibility is such great news, because it means that there's power in the gospel. The gospel being the good news of Jesus. There's power in telling others about them. We need to remember telling others about Jesus is not based on our strength. Right? You telling somebody else about Jesus has nothing to do with your strength or power. It's about the good news of Jesus. We typically don't do things we aren't very good at, do we? We don't typically get involved in things if we don't have some say in the outcome or the control of it, which makes sense. But the power of the gospel has nothing to do with you or me. The gospel doesn't gain power because of what team we cheer for. It doesn't grow stronger because of the car we drive. It doesn't lose power because we're not the boss or the neighborhood we live in. The power of the gospel exists independently of who we are. And that's why Jesus tells them. He tells us, verse 18, all authority. He could have said some. He could have said a little bit. He could have said on Sunday mornings, but he says all authority has been given to him in heaven, on earth. And we miss this because we're so removed from this moment. We have to remember what these men and women had just been through in the last 40 or 50 days. Many of them had uprooted their lives to follow Jesus, and then he dies on a cross. And they're left wondering, what do I do now? But then he is alive again. Right, so they're 40 days removed from his resurrection. Put ourselves in their shoes. You watch someone die. You see a lifeless body put in a tomb. And now that person is standing in front of you telling you that all the power he has, it's been given to him, and go tell people. Listen, we're numb to that moment. But can you imagine the followers of Jesus standing in front of him after he had died and came back to life, and he's beginning to talk about the power that is within him? He is giving, he has the authority for us to go and tell others about Jesus. Here's what I think is true. If we saw someone die and come back to life and they told us to tell others about them, we would do it. I think we would do it. If we saw somebody hang on a cross, pulled down from a cross, put in a tomb, and a little bit later they stood in front of us and said, hey, would you do me a favor? Would you go tell people about me? We'd be like, yes, I will. I'll do it right now. That's where these people were in this moment. And Jesus is telling them it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the authority that I have, the power that brought me back to life. That same power is telling you to go tell people about me. It's not about the authority that you bring to the conversation. Which is good, because what authority do we have about life and death? None. But Jesus, in this moment, is alive after being dead, he has authority to speak about life and death. The one who conquered death and the one who gives life is the one talking. And he says the power of the gospel is not about us, it's about Jesus. Listen, he doesn't gather them around and say, hey, I'm going to divide you into groups based on how tall you are, or how athletic you are, or how successful you are. And so the more successful ones, I'm really going to lean into you doing this. The least successful ones, I mean, maybe, but try to watch these guys and see what they do. Once you earn some more money, once you move into a better neighborhood, then maybe. No, they're all lumped together because it's not about them. It's about Jesus. And this is great news for us. And then look, Jesus nails this. He says in verse 19, go. Go, therefore, and make disciples. Therefore means, in other words, because I have this authority, that's what Jesus is saying, because I have this authority, go. And a more accurate translation would actually be as you go, which is way better than just go. It goes good, but as you go is better because we can excuse go, right? We have 1,000 excuses for why we can't go. We do it all the time. People invite you to something, work's doing something, your neighbor wants you to come to something. You can come up with an excuse all the time to not go. We've got 1,000 reasons, right? I can't make it, I have to work. I'd love to help, but my kids have this thing I have to be at, right? Man, I wish I could be there, but we've got family in town. I can come up with an excuse of why I can't go. In fact, I have a list of them. I can do it really quickly, right on the spot. It's a fun game I play. I just run through this list when I get invited to things. I'd love to be there, but I can't go because I've got 4 kids. I got a lot of excuses, right? Nobody ever questions. If you throw your kid out there as the reason, nobody's ever going to question that. Okay, that's free. That's a side note. If your kids are grown, they're older, you got to adopt somebody or something. You got to find out your own excuse. I can make excuses. You can make excuses for not going. But Jesus is on to us, and he tells us not just go, but as you go. So what he's saying is, while you're at work, while you're at your kids' thing, while your family is in town, here's what he's saying is, as you do anything, do this one thing. As you do anything, do this one thing. Make disciples. Tell people about me. And see, we have it backwards. We have this backwards because we live life and we say that we need to make telling people about Jesus part of our life. We add it as an event. Like I need to put this on my schedule. I need to plan this as part of my day. I need to set up this time to go talk to them. And that works for a little while. Maybe a week or two, maybe a month. But then we get busy. We get into a routine of life. We run out of time. We're not planning it. And before we know it, we're no longer telling people about Jesus because we just haven't made it part of our life. But Jesus knows this about us. So he says, sharing Jesus isn't something you add to your life. It should be something that every part of your life revolves around. Or we should remember that telling people about Jesus is not something you do. It's part of who you are. This was not Jesus saying, hey, here's another thing to do. He was saying, as you live your life, you should be talking about me. Have you ever been around a new parent? It's beautiful for a little bit, and then it's kind of annoying, isn't it? Let's just be honest. Like at first, it's like, man, I'm so happy for you. This is so beautiful. But then after the 15th story about their kid and how smart they are at 4 months old, and I think they can recognize letters already, and you're like, they can't. You don't say that to them, but you just kind of back out of the conversation. They pull out their phone, they show you pictures of their kids. People with new kids will show pictures of their kids to complete strangers, right? Like, hey, would you like to see a picture of my sweet child? And the answer is like, no, I don't even know who you are. But nobody says that, again, because it's a kid. Nobody's going to talk bad about that, right? So a new parent talks about their kids all the time. Why do they do that? Because a kid entered into a family changes you, right? Maybe nothing more in your life changes you than having a kid. Now, let me ask you, do you think those parents get up one day and they say, you know what, it's been a few weeks since I've talked about my sweet Johnny. You know what, I'm going to look at my calendar. 2 weeks from Thursday, I've got some free time. I'm going to work in an opportunity to talk about my kid and show some pictures of my kid. Do you think that's how they function? No, of course not. They just talk about their kids in all areas of life, at the ball field, at the gym, at work, at home. They just talk about their kids. It's just something they do because it's just in them. It's who they are. They can't help it. And when talking about Jesus as part of who we are, not something that we do, our days will look different. Our conversations will look different. Our opportunities to talk about him, it's almost immeasurable. But for fun, we're going to try to measure it. Let's count them and see how many opportunities we could have to talk about Jesus. Social studies say that social interactions, the average person has between 6 and 25 interactions a day. That's a big range, right? 6 and 20. The reason it's a big range is because some of you have never met a stranger before in your life, ever. Everybody you ever are shoulder to shoulder with could potentially be your new best friend. And some of you, your favorite game to play is solitaire, right? That's why it's 6 to 25. Just for fun, who in here is like, yeah, I've never met a stranger? Anybody? A few of you? Yep, your hands went up quick. A few of you in here, some of you in here, who would say, I do like solitaire a lot? Anybody? Yeah. And you know what's interesting about this is when I ask that question, the ones who are like, I've never met a stranger, their hands are super quick. Solitaire, they're like, yes, please move on. I'm uncomfortable right now. So it's 6 to 25. But let's just narrow this down. We'll put it on the low end. Let's say that we have 10 interactions with somebody a day, 10 times a day. That means, on average, we have 70 interactions a week, 70 times in a week that we could talk about Jesus. That means this year you will have 3,640 chances to tell someone about Jesus. Now listen, that's a lot of talking about Jesus, right? And I've been around the weirdo who won't shut up about Jesus before. You know, I'm like, hey, I'm just trying to talk about the basketball game right now. You know, Jesus ain't playing. Could we watch March Madness? You know, so I'm not asking you to be the weirdo. I don't want you to be that dude either. So let's just narrow this down a little bit. Let's just say that out of the 3,640, we just take 10% of that to talk about Jesus. That means this year you'll have 364 times to talk about Jesus. Just 10%, if you're on the low end of social interactions, gives you almost 400 times a year to talk about Jesus. That's why Jesus' plan is brilliant. You're not going to put 400 times on your calendar this year. I'm not going to put it on my calendar. But I'm going to have 400 interactions with people this year. That's why his plan is so brilliant. He tells a couple hundred people is as you live, as you go, when you move, when you go to this town and you go to this town and you go to this town, just talk about me. You don't have to go do something special, something extra, something different. Just talk about me. His plan is amazing. We should be excited about it. This is an easy plan actually for us to execute. The fact that the authority that raised Jesus from the dead is the same authority that sends us out to talk about him is amazing. You don't have to add something to your schedule. You just tell the people that are already on your schedule. Such a genius plan. But I know you, because I know me, that may be an exciting plan, but there is, in probably all of us in here to some degree, a little voice inside your head right now telling you all the reasons that this wouldn't work. All the reasons why you couldn't do this. All the reasons this doesn't apply to you. We don't know enough. We're not smart enough. We're not good enough. We don't have all the answers. That little lump in your throat is called fear. And we all have it. It's very real. And so I want to help you a little bit with this. The next time you go to tell someone about Jesus and you feel that lump in your throat, the next time you get ready to talk about Jesus and you feel that lump in your throat, remember Jesus' plan. He says to tell others. It's not an option. He says to tell others. And here's the best part of the plan is you're not alone. You're not alone when you do this. Now, one option would be we could all partner up right now and raise hands and find a buddy that, hey, anytime I'm going to talk about Jesus, I'm going to call you and I cannot be alone. We can be on the phone together. But that seems awkward, right? And we've already admitted some of us like solitaire. So that's not the plan, okay? That's not how you're not alone. It's the last part of what Jesus says, the best part, when he says, go tell people about me. Verse 20, he says, and remember, I am with you when? Always. always, to the end of the age. What he's saying to them is, I know this is going to be scary to you sometimes. I know you're going to have a lump in your throat. I know you're going to be worried about what they'll say. This is what he's saying to the group in front of him. This is what he's saying to us. But he says, I will be with you always. Several years ago, I got to go to Togo, Africa. I've been there several times on mission trips. I think this is my second or third trip. And on this particular trip, we were putting a roof on one of the churches. And when I say one of the churches, it's 3 walls and a metal roof. It is not like the churches we have here. And as we were working that day, I was talking with the pastor. His name is Ben. I think we have a picture of Ben. This is Ben here. Ben was 23 at that time. He had gotten saved and was pastoring this church. I think he's got an Auburn Tigers shirt on, but we overlooked that. I love Ben. I love talking to him. I met him the first time I went there, and so he was telling me how the church was doing, the ups and downs and stuff. And one of the things about Togo that's interesting is Togo is the voodoo capital of the world. It's an evil place. They practice not in secret or in private. I mean, it's very publicly practiced voodoo and witchcraft throughout Togo. It's really hard to explain. You have to see it to really understand what it feels like to be around the presence of evil in that way. But it was practiced all over Togo. And there is a witch doctor that lived about 50 yards from Ben's church, just right down the road from his church. And we had to drive by it every single day on the way to Ben's church. And so we would see, often in the morning or in the evenings, their ceremonies, their witchcraft ceremonies out in the road, out in front of their temple, where they were dancing and doing their ceremony. And I'm telling you, the pressure you felt driving by. I don't have a lot of hair, but it all stood up when you drove by. You just felt the presence of evil. I mean, it was creepy. And we would drive by this all the time. And Ben is telling me about meeting with the woman witch doctor down the road from him. And he tells her about Jesus. And he keeps loving her. And he keeps telling her about Jesus. And he keeps loving her. And one day she breaks down and gives her life to Jesus. Ben spent 2 days and 2 nights in her room as she threw up and convulsed and screamed. Her family came in from Togo. They couldn't believe it. This is a woman who had surrendered her life to serving Satan. That's what she had given her life to do. And Ben tells her about Jesus, and she gets saved. And I remember I said, Ben, weren't you afraid? Like, it's a little terrifying. Weren't you afraid? Ben, I get nervous driving by that place, and you walked into her house surrounded by her and some of her followers and tell them about Jesus. Aren't you scared? And I'll never forget what 110-pound Ben said to me in broken English. He put his arm around me and he patted me on my chest and he said, "No, Michael, I'm not scared because he who is in me is greater than he who is in the world." And he didn't make that up. That's not something that came to Ben. 1 John 4:4, John, who was a follower of Jesus, said, "You are from God, little children, and you have conquered them because the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world." Here's the point. You can do this. Jesus promised to be with you. And you have to remember the one in you is greater than the one in them. But some of us don't know that because we've never put it to the test. We don't know that the power of the gospel is great. We don't know that the good news of Jesus is at work everywhere, and we might be missing it because we haven't shared Jesus with someone. And Ben is telling this witch doctor about Jesus in their home. Did he put that on his schedule? Was that on his iPhone calendar plan? Oh, on Thursday, on May 2nd, I'm going to go to the witch doctor. No. Do you know what the witch doctor was for Ben? That was his as you go. He would walk from his house to his church, and you know what was on the way? The witch doctor's house. So as he went and she was outside, he did what Jesus tells us to do. He talked about Jesus. And he did it for years. That was his as you go. I don't know where you all live. I doubt you're walking past a witch doctor's house on your way to work tomorrow. You have an as you go too. Don't miss out on the plan. It is happening. Be part of it. And we have to remember the only way that we lose is if we don't tell people about Jesus. This is the only way you don't get to be a part of his plan. This is the only way that you don't impact the kingdom is if you don't tell people about Jesus. Nowhere in Jesus' instructions to these people on that hill that day does he tell them to save someone. Because let's be honest, that's what we're afraid of, isn't it? I'm afraid that if I talk to you about Jesus, you will say, that's not for me. I don't want to hear about that. I don't care about that. Right? That's what we're afraid of, is that we will be rejected, that they will say no thanks. That's why we are afraid to tell others about Jesus. What if they say no? But I've got great news for you. You don't have to save anyone. You just have to tell them about the one that saved you. Did you know in all of Scripture, I've read it all. Did you know not one time in all of this does it say, you go save somebody? You're not responsible for that. Never. The only thing this tells us to do is go tell them about the one that saved us. That's our responsibility. We have the authority that conquered death. We technically have over 3,000 opportunities a year. We are never alone. So who will we share Jesus with? Because after all, let's think about it. After all, aren't you thankful that somebody shared Jesus with you? There was a time in your life you didn't know Jesus, and maybe things were bad. Maybe you were worried about things. Maybe things were good, but you were just apart from Jesus. And somebody that knows you spoke into your life and told you about Jesus. Now, I think if we're honest with each other, we would say, if you're a follower of Jesus, that we have never once stopped and been mad at that person who told us about Jesus, have we? If you've given your life to Jesus, has there ever been a time when you're sitting there at night and you think, I can't believe the audacity that they told me about Jesus, right? Next time I see them, I'm going to let them have it for telling me about Jesus. No, of course not, right? In fact, when you think about that person who shared Jesus with you, you probably have a special place in your heart for them. You're probably thankful for them because they showed you how to have life instead of death. You're glad they didn't get saved and keep it to themselves because you know what everyone who is a follower of Jesus knows is that Jesus shouldn't stop in you. He should spread through you. You didn't get saved just for you to be saved. You were saved so that you could have a relationship with Jesus and so that you could tell others about him, because that's the plan. You telling people about Jesus. Jesus should not stop with you. He should spread through you. And the good news, the gospel will spread. It will change lives because the name of Jesus is powerful. And here's the great news. The gospel doesn't get nervous. The gospel does not get anxious. The gospel doesn't worry about who is hearing it. No, Jesus is powerful, and his name will be told. It will be spread. It will be spread to your neighbor. It will be spread to your boss. It will be spread to your family member. It will be spread to the witch doctor in Africa. The question is, will it be because of you or someone else? There's no greater role you and I can play in the kingdom of God than telling others about Jesus. We don't have to save anyone. We just tell them about the one who saved us. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions. Here's the first one. Who should you tell about Jesus? There should be somebody that pops into your brain right now. And if there's not, you got to stop hanging out with Christians so much, all right? You need to hang around some lost people. You need to get to know your neighbors. Who should you tell about Jesus? Somebody popped into your head right now. I guarantee you, everybody in this room, somebody popped into your head right now. And so here's the next question. When are you going to tell them? When are you going to tell them about Jesus? I don't mean when are you going to take a Bible and hit them in the side of the head and scream at them. That's not super effective. I mean, when are you just going to talk about Jesus and what Jesus means to you? And begin that conversation with them. Because that is the plan. That's what Jesus gathered them up to do. Hey, as you go, talk about me. And a few hundred followers of Jesus has turned into a few billion followers of Jesus. And if you and I don't tell the people around us about Jesus, we're the ones who lose. We're the ones who miss out on what Jesus is going to do anyways. He is going to build his kingdom. He's just inviting us to be a part of it. And I promise you, you will never have a more rewarding moment in your life than when you see somebody that you have been talking to about Jesus give their life to Jesus. So who should you tell, and when are you going to do it? Let's pray.